Bonsoir, bonsoir à toutes et à tous. On vous laisse terminer de vous installer. J'espère que tout le monde peut s'asseoir. Bienvenue à vous. Alors, je pense qu'il y a beaucoup d'étudiantes et d'étudiants en architecture, mais également des enseignantes, des enseignants et également des publics extérieurs, puisque ce sont des conférences qui sont diffusées à l'extérieur. Je suis très, très heureuse de vous accueillir si nombreux. On n'a malheureusement pas pu ouvrir en configuration 450 places, puisqu'il y avait des cours jusque tard ce soir et de nouveau des cours demain matin, et que la manipulation n'est pas si aisée de cette cloison. J'espère que tout le monde va pouvoir s'asseoir. On est très, très heureux d'accueillir ce soir une conférence d'architectes, qui est un studio d'architecture qui a été fondé en 2000 par David Lorente. Vous me dites si je fais des erreurs dans la prononciation des noms. Josep, Ricart, Xavier Ross et Roger Tudeau. Ils combinent leur activité professionnelle également avec de l'enseignement en école d'architecture à Barcelone. Donc à la faculté d'architecture de l'Université Polytechnique de Catalogne et à l'école polytechnique fédérale de Zurich et à la Graduate School of Design de l'Université de Harvard. Voilà, je pense que je vais peut-être laisser Rémy présenter plus précisément les activités de ce studio d'architecture. En tout cas, je suis très contente que vous soyez nombreux parce que je pense que c'est des contenus professionnels qui vont être très intéressants. Peut-être juste mentionner les prix qu'a reçu cette agence, puisque c'est une agence qui a été distinguée à plusieurs reprises par des prix nationaux et des prix internationaux, comme le prix européen de l'intervention en faveur du patrimoine architectural en 2019, le prix MAPEI, je ne sais pas comment on dit MAPEI, de la construction durable en 2017, le prix BRIC en 2016, le prix Fritz Hugger Prize en 2014, et l'agence a également figuré par 2 fois sur la liste restreinte des prix Miss Van der Rohe en 2019 et 2017. Voilà, leurs travaux que vous connaissez sûrement puisque vous êtes venus très nombreux ont également été largement publiés et exposés sur le plan national et international. Voilà, je passe la parole à Rémy pour présenter plus spécifiquement les travaux et le positionnement de cette agence avant de laisser la parole à notre conférencier.
Merci Hélène. Alors, Harquitectes, avant de passer la parole à Josep, c'est une rencontre qu'on a fait avec certains d'entre vous qui êtes ici, qui étaient en 3e année l'an passé, l'année d'avant encore. Moi, je connaissais, mais sur le papier, sur les revues depuis quelques années, et déjà, j'avais été impressionné par les maisons qu'ils faisaient. Il y avait dans ces maisons déjà une grande partie de toute leur recherche, de tout leur travail. Donc, la monomatière qui gère à la fois la structure, l'enveloppe, la thermique, qui donne une sensualité aussi au projet, notamment la brique. Il y avait déjà pas mal de notions de maisons passives thermiques où, à travers tout un dispositif savant de cours, de patio, de protection solaire, etc., comment on donne dans nos climats méditerranéens du confort en fait à notre habitat. Mais bon, il n'y a pas que la maîtrise des enveloppes et de la thermique, évidemment, dans leur architecture. Il y a le génie aussi du dialogue avec la préexistence. Il y a un travail de composition urbaine. Il y a un travail sur les matériaux. Il y a l'art vraiment d'assembler à travers les matériaux un dialogue et d'installer un dialogue avec tout ce qui existe. Et en 2022, donc la première fois où on a visité à Barcelone le centre culturel et social Lealtat, dans un quartier haut de Barcelone. Pour moi, ça a été, j'avoue, un choc à la fois émotionnel et aussi de voir comment cet ancien dancing avait été transformé en lieu de vie pour les jeunes, pour la culture, pour l'art, etc. Avec la délicatesse de laisser justement quelques traces apparentes de ce que le bâtiment a été, et puis d'amener aussi cette identité à travers la simplicité de ces matériaux. Donc voilà, depuis, évidemment, ils ont travaillé sur pas mal de programmes différents, toujours avec cette constante et cette énergie incroyable, que ce soit pour une maison, pour un centre culturel, pour une bibliothèque, de mettre en avant à la fois le génie du lieu, à la fois un lieu qu'on invente et qu'on va partager dans une radicalité, une sobriété, une grande élégance dans l'assemblage des matériaux. Donc, j'ai un grand plaisir vraiment d'accueillir Josep Ricart à Harquitectes, qui vient pour cette conférence. Comme le disait Hélène, ils sont depuis quelques années ont un succès international qui est complètement mérité à travers des prix, à travers des reconnaissances. Ils travaillent, je crois, principalement en Catalogne, mais peut-être Josep nous racontera plus de choses. Les 4 enseignent en école d'architecture, donc ils ont aussi ce goût de la transmission et de la pédagogie dans la manière de raconter les projets. Je n'en dis pas plus, je vous laisse en compagnie de Josep. Donc la conférence sera en anglais, tendez bien l'oreille et appréciez, passez un bon moment. Merci Josep.
Thanks for the invitation. Sorry for my French. It sounds like English. I'm really happy to see how many people are here. My wife never believes me that so successful my presentation. I will try to do it standing up. And I will try. I won't present a complete project, but I will show you lots of projects in order to show you some examples about what I'm trying to explain with that concept of reciprocal architecture, which is a little bit the general frame of our vision about how we approach the architecture. In fact, to define architecture, I think it's not so difficult. There's lots of definition about architecture. What for me is really difficult, and I've been teaching for 17, 18 years, explain what means to project architecture. I'm not trying to explain that. I'm just trying to explain what means for us reciprocal architecture. Because about architecture, there's a lot of definition, lots of approach, and we like a lot that general approach, more or less defined by Lewis Mumford, defining that architecture should be to provide shelter to human being in nature, like that. And for us, and is a concept quite close also to Rudowski's approach. It's not the only approach, of course, but for us, we feel comfortable with that idea of providing of shelter in nature, not against nature, not in front of the nature, not in opposition to nature, but managing the conditions of nature in order to get that comfortable conditions for living. That idea, and using Rudowski drawings and so on, sometimes sound like we are talking about vernacular, about fashion, architecture, or construction, and it's not like that, because we can find out lots of beautiful examples in the 20th century of architecture that has been developed under that idea that we can manage natural conditions in order to get that idea of comfort. But what is true is that the last 100 years, 150 years, because of the fuel fossil era that we live in, we've forgotten that idea of limits that used to be clear when architecture and construction were dealing with natural conditions. We've lost that idea of limit in availability. We are in that misunderstanding that everything is possible because we have the false sensation that there's no limit in resources, there's no limit in energy, there's no limit in money, and human being can do whatever they want to do. So we have coming to that sometimes extraordinary examples of architecture, but based on the idea that we don't need nature anymore in order to provide comfort. Then nature is what happened on the other side, not of the window, on the other side of the glass, the other side of what we are designing, just as something to be seen, just as a view. And not only because of that cost of awareness about nature. It's also because we have confused, they're in the confusion between architectural experience and architectural communication. They are all of us, also me, my years at the school, right now, we are more concerned about how we explain, how we communicate, how we show architecture than about to project experience in architecture. And this is because also during the last 100 years, I used to explain that, showing something that today I don't have the pictures here, but this by putting in comparison the front page of the New York Times day after the crisis of the 29, and today front page of the same paper. You will see that 100 years ago, there was no image, no drawing in the front page to explain the big crack of 29. Okay, so what does it mean? That in terms of communications, there's nothing better than the visual communication. And we are in that confusion that because the fastest communicative system is the visual perceptive system, we have confused that to project architecture means to work just with our eyes. So I think that both misunderstandings about our relation with nature and our relation with the visual system of perception have come into that, for us, critical moment of architecture as a critical moment in general in terms of the ecological crisis that we live in. We think that we are quite lucky because let's say that 16, 17 years ago, we began to be really concerned about ecological knowledge, about the environmental responsibility in architecture and so on. We went indeed into sustainability systems and some that kind of knowledge that I'm sure that you perfectly know and you are also concerned as we are now. And we were lucky because at the same time we were, thanks to the university, when we were teaching, people that we met at that moment, let us come into that kind of conscious about environmental responsibility. And it was at the same time that the big financial crisis shows up in Europe. Too young to remember that, but for the people in my 50s, so you have to imagine that 17, 18 years ago, it was quite terrible to be an architect, especially in Spain, where the construction crisis was huge. It was so difficult to get a mortgage from the bank in order to develop a house. Why we were lucky? Because the budget of our clients were too low. It was not enough to use efficient, very sophisticated technological systems in order to provide sustainable and very efficient comfort. Okay, and our fees were too low in order to get sophisticated simulations and in order to develop sustainable strategies in our projects. So thanks to that problem with money, the only way to develop sustainable strategies in our projects was by using a specific architectonical strategy, by being more sustainable, but just using architecture, not by using machines or sophisticated and efficient systems or sophisticated simulations. Now, in the buildings that we are trying to develop now, we really need simulation. But by that moment, the only way to be responsible in terms of sustainability was by using a specific architectonical strategies. And that's what we think that has helped us to arrive to that moment, to that point, to understand the problems with certain kind of approach to architecture. I repeat, extraordinary examples, lots of them, but with not enough level of conscious about how we have to be aware of natural and contextual conditions. For example, strategies based on the use of the building. The first strategy in terms of sustainability, it's not about the object, what is more or less sustainable. What is more or less sustainable is about how we use the object. So That, in terms of architecture, means to understand that not all the spaces need the same temperature, need the same level of comfort. Not all the activities need the same kind of comfort conditions. Of course, it was also at that time that we began to use thick materials, biospherical materials. That is, again, a completely specific architectonical decision. Or by introducing that kind of intermediate space that know perfectly well, because our reference was basically French reference. So by introducing that kind of intermediate space that are not only interesting in terms of passive strategies, are also interesting in terms of how we use, again, a house or a public facility or a building. And even when the active system is necessary, when we need a climate system in order to provide the extra of comfort, when the passive is not enough, we always try, from that point, from that moment, we've been always trying to put all those systems the most permanent part of architecture, which is the structure of the building. So even when the active is necessary, we try to plug it, to introduce it in the very specific and permanent part of the building. So in our history, let's say, it's been our process in order to understand a little bit that we need to recover that relation with nature in order to, if it's not possible to come back to the pre-fossil fuel moment, maybe to be at that ecotech that we know, in order to be a little bit not in such a moment of crisis with the ecology. And that idea is what we call reciprocal architecture. It means that we try to provide not comfort, but to project the experience of people. And we really believe that this experience is far more intense, far more convincing, far more extraordinary when it's the result of the collaboration between architectonical decisions and natural conditions. When your experience is the result of this combination, then suddenly it becomes something extraordinary. Now, explaining in that 10 years ago, I will never explain our projects like that. I used to explain our projects in a very scientific way, trying to demonstrate how passive process works, because our challenge, our target at that moment was coming to that sustainable projects and architecture. But we have discovered that thanks to that excuse, thanks to that level of conscious, we have discovered that we are projecting better atmospheres, more extraordinary moments for people. So now I prefer to show that kind of beautiful painting than to show diagrams or simulations, images that demonstrate that our projects get into the temperature without very low resources waste. Beautiful painting comes from have to be Catalan here, so I have to show you how good painters we have. This is Ramon Casas, a very unknown painter, but really skilled guy. And I show this painting because it's beautiful, because it explains that extraordinary moment as a result of the combination of the natural conditions, the shadow, the ventilation, the vegetation, the mass of the wall behind that guy having the nap. But the painting is a manifesto itself, because the title of this painting is An Indoor Outdoor. Real title. When I discovered that, I knew the painting before knowing the title. When I discovered that the title was so good description about what we are trying to explain, to get indoor conditions in an outdoor situation. So that's our idea of reciprocal. Produce and to project the experience of people based on the collaboration, on the interdependency between construction and context. And context is not just natural conditions. It's also physical phenomena. We have to talk about physics, art, maybe it's tough, but we talk a lot about thermodynamics at the office. and also the idea of time, to introduce time in that experience, to produce the conscious of time happening, history, of also mineral time, and context as also as social conditions in terms of traditions, in terms of sources. So this is our reciprocal concept. So the general frame, okay? I always like to produce a little bit that general image about what we are interested about at the office, because I remember when I was your age that Toyo Ito come to Barcelona, explain the Mediatek. It was on the 90s. We are completely crazy about Toyo Ito and the Mediatek. We are completely crazy. So we went to the lecture in Barcelona, doing a large line. And just before coming to the lecture room, I get a new book from Toyo Ito, and the title of was like thinkings or theories or something like that. Something really about something very intellectual. And it was so terrible that the lecture was basically a description of the Mediatek. It was nothing else that this is the main door, this is the bathrooms, this is the staircase, and nothing else. So from that moment, I have that idea that you have to explain something more than just buildings, trying to share your ideas and your challenge and your process. So that's why I've done this previous general approach. Now, I will show you not exactly complete projects, but parts of projects that I think that explain, can be an example about when I talk about that idea of interdependency in design decisions and context, textual situations can explain better than my words. And in the first, show you a couple of projects that have that what we call convective spaces. Convective spaces that are quite well. This is a house that we finished like 4 or 5 years ago. It's a house for a friend, so it's the only way to get that kind of the only way to do sitting rooms 12 meters high if the guy who sits there is a friend of you. No competitions, no big ideas, no big explanations. Just try to be a good friend. Because the only way is to get the confidence of the client. Nothing else. That guy is pharmaceutic. He has mafia in the middle of Granollers. So he's so serious. Kind of guy with a shirt with his initials at the shirt. And I remember explaining him the project, and he was like, I don't get anything, but I have confidence in it. That's great. Okay, that the plot is in a west-east orientation. So in the south side of the plot, where you can get the sun gain, when you can get the heat from the sun, is impossible because your terrible neighbor is a plurifamiliar housing, 3 stores, and so on. So the only way, just from that point, to get some sun gains was to produce a convective space, not only to get sun gains from the sun, from the south, but also to perform as a natural chimney to produce natural ventilation. So quite simple thermodynamic concept else. Okay, but from that point, becomes sometimes extraordinary because it's in this convective space, thermodynamical space, that combines not only the sun gains and the natural ventilation, but with a lot of inertial mass, with a lot of mass that helps. In Barcelona, this is very clear. I suppose that in Marseille is quite close. When we live close to the sea, quite simple to explain that thermodynamical concept. That means that the sea helps us producing, making softer the difference between temperatures, summer and winter, night and day, because during the summertime, the energy of the sun is stored in the sea and comes back to the city during the winter time. I know that you know that. So That's a basic concept in the Mediterranean climate that helps us a lot, and it's always in our projects. Doesn't matter if it's a private house or if it's a public building. So this combination of huge wide walls with natural ventilation, convective, and so on, but produce something that is quite extraordinary, which is the sitting room of this house, is the entrance, is everything. In fact, is a non-programmed space. It works as a lobby, it works for parties, it works for everything. Another reason for that section, it was that on the west side was also a very noisy street, a lot of cars, so pollution. So that idea to get all the relation with the outside through the sky, it looks like a very good idea. Another example of that kind of thermodynamical convective spaces is this house that we've just finished here. It's a house in the middle of Barcelona. I won't go deeper on that. Just is another example of that kind of non-programmed but quite extraordinary spaces that have these genetics in order to. It's the reason that why the house performs like it performs, why the comfort is like it is, based in very real, that kind of natural comfort. When we show that kind of, when we are in that kind of spaces, we have the sensation that are more convincing because all the attributes of the experience in the space are placed in that very permanent part of architecture, which is the. So it's something that it's really common in all our projects, that try to put into the maximum number of attributes in order to define the whole idea of experience. The really beautiful house. But is an example of the same, that idea of very vertical space getting sun gains from the top and producing natural ventilation. But at the same time, what we are happy about is that the final result is about something quite extraordinary in terms of living. The porch is another example of that kind of thermodynamical space. That kind, a machine that works as a gallery in winter in order, again, to get sun gain, and works as a pure porch, producing and promoting, emphasizing, intensifying the natural ventilation. A house, in that case, for a rich guy, that he was able to assume that this house has not other sitting room than the porch. The porch that is completely open in summer, no TV, there's nothing else than this porch working as a passive space, completely closed in winter and completely open in summer. The porch is a beautiful strategy that, in that kind of interdependence, in that kind to put in relation people experience and context, is quite clear in this case, with two gardens in both sides of the porch. This house where the porch has become not only the sitting, but the whole daily program of the house, the kitchen, the sitting, the dinner, even the studio, even the laundry, surrounds the block of bedrooms, working as a porch that gets, again, open in summer and closed in winter. That, well, we're not ashamed to say that we copy everybody. So Navabardi, the other thing, Lacaton Basal, so not a big, they're quite proud about that. Or in this case, that this is an office building, but the whole previous building works in that idea to manage the relation between human experience and the outside conditions. The pre-existing factory just improved the factory in order to get more insulation, to control, to introduce new systems of natural ventilation that can be managed, that can be controlled. And from that basic, very simple approach, then we've just defined a little better conditions in order to work in an office way, producing that idea. Because in a factory, that idea of factory for an office space is quite sexy because it's so big space, so continuous. The idea of New York loft is so good that everybody thinks that it's so easy to put an office space into a factory. It's quite impossible because the big difference between a factory and an office space is the lack of hierarchy in the factory. In a factory, nothing is organized, nothing is hierarchized, which is cool, is incredibly nice. But when you're trying to put people working in departments, that kind of synergies, when the typical strategy of box in box shows up. Here we try to put that kind of clusters, like clusters, surrounding that natural vegetation, where everybody can be a little bit better if it's necessary, but 75% of the hours of the year, the office can be open because the passive conditions in the whole shell are quite good in order to work. So, Reciprocal is about work to manage, to collaborate with natural conditions and physical phenomena. So, that kind of design to architectonical decisions in terms of geometry and material, dealing, managing natural conditions, emphasize, you intensify, and you produce comfortable experience on people. But we are really interested not only on that kind of natural conditions and physical phenomena. We think that is also really powerful to have the feeling, to have the conscious of time into that kind of space. Time, of course, that can be for Rémy, because yesterday was not Lealtats and Senka on the presentation. He asked for that, so I placed some images. But it's a good example about our position in front of heritage. Of course, that there's a cultural dimension when, as architects, we have to deal with heritage. Okay, there's a cultural. But in our case, we really believe that there's no better well, to give value to the heritage. For us, the first strategy to give value to the heritage is to put the heritage in use again. To analyze what are the attributes of this previous pre-existing building that are still able to perform in order to help to provide that comfort and that indoor experience. The best, for us, it's quite clear that this strategy comes far before that cultural decisions in terms of composition or in terms of protection or in terms of whatever. So, in this case, this is a former cooperative of workers. It was a social building at the 20s, 30s. Short story, because during the Civil War, after the Civil War, all that kind of associations disappeared and so on. And in fact, of course, that the building was protected. The building has to be recovered in terms of facade and so on. But our really interest on the building was to understand, in terms of geometry and material, what parts of the building were still able to perform in order to produce new kind of comforts, new kind of programs, and so on. That has become a civic and cultural center. Our decision was basically to demolish part of that heritage. But because parts of the heritage has interesting attributes in order to provide comfort, and parts of the heritage, just by the demolition of these parts, producing new kind of spaces, helps to complete the general strategy of comfort by this kind of, again, convective spaces that works as a natural engine, moving the air and so on. But here was basically, and it was a competition. And we were so true, because you know that in the competitions, they ask you for square meters for a theater, some meters for library, some meters for social room, and so on. We were completely true, explaining to the jury that the square meters that they were asking for, there were They were not exactly there, but there was a room that it's perfect for its geometry and material to become a theater or a rehearsal room and so on. And we won by being true. So we explained clearly that this big space here even was a theater at the 20s, but now can become the theater that they were asking for. It's not for 300 people, it's just for 200 people. But the previous attributes of the building are quite perfect in order to provide that new kind of function. Okay, so on the left side are the part of the building that remained, because in terms of geometry, were useful for new programs. And the right side of the section is to produce this kind of convective space that is completely passive, and it's not only helping to the comfort strategy, it's also producing a new way to produce circulations in the building. So all the new circulations of the building, all the circulations of the building are completely new, not the uses or not the original spaces, but the circulations are completely new through that gate that cross like on a street the whole building. The left side, the former space with some new attributes, but performing like it used to. And on the right side, that kind of spaces, non-program, completely passive, and so on. But time, not only to talk about heritage, not only to deal with heritage in terms of reusing and cultural approach. Time is also the time of construction. True that in Catalonia we are well known because we are that guys that never coat the walls. Okay? We are that guy. We are the group that never plaster the walls, never hide the walls, and so. But even in my family, when we visit some of our buildings or the house that I'm living now, my friends or people always ask, "Ready finished?" Always have that sensation that maybe it's in the process, maybe we're gonna paint, we're gonna plaster, and we don't finish the walls because we really believe, in one side, in terms of thermodynamics and in terms of comfort, in terms of humidity management, it's far better to show the bricks, no plaster, no coated. But we also don't plaster the buildings in order to show not only the time of the heritage, but also the time of the construction, because there's time there. I mean, I'm amazed, I'm surprised, I really congratulate about the building, but this building smells like new. Okay? Our building is fantastic, I assure you, but really have the feeling of new. Okay? Our buildings hardly never gives that feeling. Always, because at least you have the sensation of the process of the construction. You have the clear feeling that you're not doing the opening of the building, that the masonries, that the carpenters began the living in the building. That's another reason to don't plaster, to don't hide, to don't coat and cover walls. Okay? Building is completely like this. I mean, we are showing all the elements of construction because it's better for the thermodynamics, but it's also better in terms of that experience based on the time and the memory of the construction. Of course, that in that kind of buildings, there's time about thermodynamics itself to have the feeling that your comfort is based on the natural performance, on the natural behavior of the building, also gives a third idea of time, produce a third time experience, okay? Heritage, memory, construction, and the performance and the behavior of the building. Like building that building is a facilities and equipment, is a public elderly school. And the building has some active systems based on the structure. There's a heating pavement that can be cool in summer. It has a lot of huge walls helping to the temperature of the building. Has a lot of massive strategies and so on. But it has a final, a little bit crazy challenge that the movement of the air for renovation, not for climatization, for renovation, is based on a natural engine, which is that bizarre roof that has the building. Those natural chimneys are able to move 15,000 volume meters of air per hour. That means that the air of every room in the building can be renovated between 9 and 11 times per hour during summertime. Really interesting. That sun chimneys, the sun chimneys is a very interesting idea because especially in our climates are quite fantastic because, those very tough thermodynamics that we use based just in big walls and natural ventilation, when you have a program like that, or like in this school, not just childs, but human people all together in a room, you know that at least in winter, you don't need any artificial climate system because just 40 people together in a classroom is enough to have the temperature, okay? So in winter, you just have to manage the minimum of renovation in order to don't lose your power that you have. In summer is the opposite. You have to take off all the excess of energy that people is producing and that the big walls are not storage enough to. So the funny idea of the sun chimneys based on that greenhouse effect is that in winter works really bad because the sun goes lower, less hours of sun. So the sun chimneys in winter really hardly move 2-3 times per hour the volume of internal air. But in summer, in Barcelona, sun chimneys come into 90 degrees inside. So because of the greenhouse effect. So with 90 degrees, the air goes up so fast that has to be replaced by the inside air. So that idea based on geometry and material was the extra challenge of this building in order not only to provide comfort by typical passive strategies, but also to move the air based on a natural engine. Outside there's not only time, there's not only natural conditions and physical phenomena, there's also people, there's also traditions, there are resources, and we also want to give that conscious of context to people in our buildings. We really believe that when you work in a vernacular context, not context like it is here, it's a beautiful old town called Ulldemolins in the Empordà. It's a beautiful area far away from Barcelona. To be in relation with that kind of heritage in terms of a small village is not just to look like the other buildings. It's to be honest, to look like you really are. Then you really are in synchronicity with what surrounds you. What I mean is that it's not about simulation, not about to look like old. It's to look like real, to look like the result of a real process based on that context, but not that context in terms of look, but that context in terms of, for example, constructive traditions, resources, material, and so on. This house, I repeat, it's a beautiful, beautiful town, really defined by these beautiful stone walls, not only the houses, but also the huertos. You plant plants, so on. So this used to be a plot, an orchard. So this used to be a plot defined by these huge walls, sometimes 4 meters high walls of this pure stone. And it's supposed to be a weekend house. And for us, it was so clear the proposal. We proposed those weekend house as just a large porch attached, linked to the former wall. Because in fact, and it was a good idea because in this village, the norms ask that the facades has to be stone look. Okay, we call crocanti, like all that kind of stones, one close to the other. So the idea was clear. The client was happy and beautiful section, that continuous porch attached to the former wall. But when we went to the council, we got a terrible surprise because the street was too narrow for the cars. It was in the council. It was on the council plan defined that this beautiful wall has to be demolished, okay, because the street has to be a little bit wider and more comfortable for the trucks turn on the corner and so on. Terrible moment. We are all very intense in the office, so it happens once a week. Terrible moment. Something bad really happened. The wall is going down. Everything goes bad and so on. But there's a beautiful sentence in Spanish. It's something like, after the bad comes the good. Something. No hay mal que por bien no venga. That when something bad happens, after that, something good is coming. Okay, so after this really bad news, we come into that research process, asking again, because it's the same strategy in terms of heritage. The heritage here is quite nothing. It's just a wall. And after the decision of the council, it's not a wall. It's just pure stones. So what we ask to this minimum heritage, if some attributes still remain there in order to be reused, in order to be part of the new perform of the house. And of course that the stone was there, the stone was able to be used in terms of a structure, the stone was there able to be used in terms of thermodynamics, helping to the natural comfort of the house. So the beautiful of the house is that we demolish the wall and we rebuild the wall. Just it's a one layer house. The walls of the house is just one section. There's no double layers. There's no insulation. There's nothing else than 60 centimeters wide walls. This is possible in that kind of so generous plot and assume huge walls. So we rebuilt the wall with that traditional technique of rameter, okay, but replacing the stones layer by layer, 10 centimeters layers, 20 centimeters layers, it depends. Reintroducing the walls with limestone mortar, is not cement mortar, combining the mortar with some of the soil of the plot in order to get some of the color of the plot, and introducing, this is possible, I repeat again, just in a weekend house. We are in the edge of the norms, okay? As insulation is illegal, okay? But as a research process, it's quite interesting. And so the insulation, you get the insulation introducing glass balls with insulated air inside, okay? So you put some air in the wall, and as the wall is so wide, you get insulation enough. It's the minimum per norm, okay? So, and the final trick is that, well, not all the walls works the same in terms of structure, not all the walls works the same in terms of insulation, so the combination of the mortars are different and so on. The plan with that is the same original project. We didn't change the project. It's the same continuous porch. It's like a domus Toscana. It's like but instead of surround an atrium, it surrounds a garden. Okay? It's a continuous series of equal spaces in a perfect section, very well orientated to the south. Well, but the good thing of the process is that at the end of the construction, when you take off the precast system, we did that kind of, I don't know the name in English, digging or something like that to the hammer, in order to recover what is asked for per law, but as an idea, it's quite beautiful to recover the look of the former stone that was there 1.5 meters just in front. Okay. So it's completely different. It's completely different to the rest of the houses because the color of the mortar is not exactly the same. The density of the stone is not exactly the same, but it's completely vernacular. It's completely in fit with the context. Why? Because the result is so consistent, it's so convincing, it's clear that it's a result of our research process quite similar to the process that did that people 200 years ago by producing that kind of construction. It's not to simulate, but to be the same. Be the same in terms of process. And this is also context. Context is not just natural conditions. Context is also that raw material techniques, that stones, and of course, I think it's important to understand, and that you will agree, that we as architects, we don't experiment spaces in a different way than the rest of human beings. We are in somewhere, we feel good, we feel bad, and this is an instant, subjective moment of experience. Then, as architects, we are able to codify the conditions that produce that beautiful experience. But as an experience, it's not different. And we're not asking our customers, we are not asking our clients to understand that this is the result of that kind of research. No, we are just checking. We are checking in our own experience that experience is fantastic, and then you understand the conditions that are producing this experience. We've been visiting our buildings for 20 years. Every summer, before every summer holidays and every winter holidays, we do a general visit to our buildings, not only the buildings that are ongoing, also the buildings that we've done 20, 15, 10 years ago. Because the result, 20 years ago, we did no theory. We wrote nothing. We were just pure professional and pragmatic practice as office. Now, by reviewing what we've done, by visiting a lot of architectures, by visiting vernacular everywhere that we can go, now we are able to decodify what has happened when I visit that quarry or that cathedral or that moment. What happens with the smell, what happens with the color, what happens with the noise. And it's that continuous critical revision of what we've done and what we visit that now, 24 years after we began the office, we are able to explain in a lecture what we believe. Up time. The section works quite well because the house has no heating system, okay? Because it's a weekend house for summer. It's supposed that gonna be for summertime, so there's no heating system in the house because it's so well orientated. It's just a pure porch, but they go in winter too. It's quite funny because as the house, I think there's a picture. Yeah, on the other orientation, the opposite side of the house is that pure continuous porch. It's south orientated, so when they move in Sunday, they come back Barcelona on Sunday, they close all the windows. In the week, possible that there's no an amount of hours of sun in order to produce the typical greenhouse effect. So when they come back in Friday in winter time, the house is quite warm enough. The funny part is that in Sunday afternoon, they have to move because the house began to be a little bit cold. But works in that very natural, comfortable way. In summer, has to be completely open, especially at night, producing that natural ventilation because these wide, huge walls that storage the excess of energy be ventilated at night in order to take off all this energy, especially at the hours that the outside temperature is better, okay? On that, this is also something that is not finished, that we are building. In Palma de Mallorca is a little bit the same story about the relation with not the vernacular as look, but the traditions or the context as social resources, material resources. this is the housing for old people, for elderly, in Palma de Mallorca. This is for a social agent called Ibabi, becoming quite famous because they are really promoting very interesting projects with quite interesting architects, as we believe. And here in this plot used to be an old school. Mallorca, and you have a very similar limestone here in the area. All this part of the Mediterranean. In fact, we have the same kind of with different varieties, but basically that kind of limestone, easy to be cut. And in Mallorca, they have an amazing, beautiful stone, so easy to be cut that, of course, it's not like granite. It's quite softer, but it's really beautiful. And it's called marès. Marès is the typical stone in Mallorca. The beautiful of Mallorca that, as it's an island, till the 90s, they still build everything with that kind of a stone. Even the very thin walls in Mallorca are built for the 90s. Everything is built in the limestone. Brown, clear color. So this school, which is nothing as heritage, it's just a school from the 70s. It was completely built in stone. But you don't have to imagine a cathedral. You are imagining really conventional walls that when you demolish, you can get that kind of rest. Okay? So the funny idea here, we won this competition just by presenting an explanation of the process. They were clearly asking for a CLT panels construction. Timber, wood. They are looking for that because they are so conscious about climate, ecological crisis, and they are really concerned about they really want to use that kind of CLT products, but they don't have CLT products produced in the island. Okay, so it has to come at least from Basque Country, at least. So we present a different idea, but it looks so vernacular enough that they were interested. So we won the competition just a piece of paper with a couple of schemes like that, and with explanation of the process. So the explanation is like that. In that case, that we will demolish the building, and the same guy that has demolished the building gonna build in the same plot that kind of huge blocks with the stone, because we come from the previous house, so we have that idea of massive elements working just a pure compression. When you work with lime concrete, with lime mortars, you cannot put steel bars in it because it doesn't mix well. So the previous house has not steel bars inside, and either is the case. Okay? So we produce that huge blocks, like because they were so proud from the administration, they were so proud in the explanation of the competition that they want to use all the surface that are possible to be built in the field. They are so generous that you can use the excess of surface for gardens or for whatever. And we decided to use that extra of space into that thermal mass, huge walls working as compression, working in a pure compression way, like in a little bit Egyptian. And it works just in a pure geometry section. The CLT panels are here, and the wall comes from the 80 centimeters, 70 centimeters, 60 centimeters, 50 centimeters, 40 centimeters. Every layer, just by pure geometry, the CLT panels get support without making any blocked link. Wow, it's a large stuff. Sorry, I'm coming in deep into the projects. But the other discovery that we've done is that we were not so happy with the first testing process, because when you got that marès beautiful stone, but you precast the block. So when you get out the casting system, what you just see, it was the mortar, like in a concrete. Okay? And so the concrete surface, beautiful surface, but the stone has disappeared. So, and also for economical reasons, we developed this process, which is with like in a swimming pool. Change the strategy of construction, and we move all the process to the plot of the of the guy who did the demolition, producing that kind of 4x4 meters of swimming pool of casting system. We place the stones again, like in the previous house. We put the mortar, the limestone mortar. We did that huge stones, and then by using that kind of quarry machines like the Sierra, we get that beautiful turrón de Gijón. You know what is turrón? It's a dessert, Spanish dessert. And you get not only the stone, not only the limestone, but you get also the cut of the machine. Again, well, we are happy that now we don't have to explain just that this is for ecological reasons, that it is. Is to have that kind of natural comfort based on inertia, based on mass, based on that very specific materials, natural cross ventilation. But the beautiful is that the experience is far more better because of that. Not the end of the strategy. Strategy is based on that, but what is amazing is to recover, not only to have that natural comfort, but also to see the stone, to see the process, to see the cutting mark over the block. So that's the storage of the blocks. And this is the construction process. Now we are like this, placing the CLT panels. Now the windows are already there, but okay. Well, I've been talking a lot about thermodynamics, but a lot of students are here. And now we as citizens, especially young people, but also other people, we have to be really aware. We are aware not only about the ecological crisis, we are also aware about social justice. These big topics, the two big subjects that at least in my classroom are all the time the worries of the students, all the time, not only about the ecological, but about the social. And I have to say that as citizen, I'm also aware, interested in that, but as architects, we have to ask ourselves how we deal with both. With the ecological, I've been explaining in all this time, up to the thermodynamics and so on. But in terms of social, I think that the architect basic role in order to deal with the social responsibility is by defining new typologies. The typology is the tool that we have as architects in order to define relation between people. It's about social. Okay? This is dwelling for young people. This is social housing. And basically, it is interesting for something, not because of the shape of the volumes, it's not because of the facade, it's because of the typology. When we do a competition, we always ask ourselves, the first thing that we do when we do a competition is to see the difference, the gap between the maximum surface that you get if you multiply the plant for the number of plants, okay? And you compare that with the maximum surface that the councils allows you to build. That's hardly never is the same. Council says, in this case, if you just multiply the plan of the building with the number of floors, it was like 16,000 square meters. But the council maximum surface is 13,000 square meters. It's quite common. And the larger is the gap, the more architectonical decision there. Up to define, you have to decide where you put the difference, where you put the gap. In this competition, the rest of the team decided, and it was a good decision, that the shape of the volumes given by the urban plan were not really beautiful, but it's true. So the rest of the team decided that you don't do this L shape, so to divide, or maybe that corner to make it shorter, or maybe the width of the bar to make it a little bit as wide, okay? And have confidence in the beautiful of the final result of that volumes defined by the urban plan. Our decision was not like that. our decision coming from all what I've been explaining you before was that it was clear to us that we need that natural element in order to promote the natural ventilation. So instead of changing the shape of the blocks, we put this continuous patio courtyard in the middle of the blocks as a previous strategy, knowing that thanks to that, all the apartments, all the housing will have cross ventilation. So the typology is a continuous series of equal spaces defined not because of the function, but defined by the natural ventilation, the natural light. There's a sentence of Jacques Delade that we have a lot of French veterans. Jacques Delade says something that like journalists compromise freedom of use. Journalists compromise freedom of use. Maybe for you it's not a big crisis to listen to that, but for someone who was in the school with both fathers, journalism, the house machine for living, and so on, and the freedom of use, flexibility, multifunctions, and so on, the sentence of Delade is that both concepts are opposite. And I think that he's completely in when one space is too much defined by the function, then to be multifunctional is quite difficult. And in that sense, we try to define spaces that are extraordinary in terms of comfort, in terms of natural light, but not highly defined by the function. So that's why all the spaces are completely equal. Doesn't mind if it's kitchen, sitting, bedroom, and so on. And from that continuous series of spaces, it's produced that really serious and maybe too much tough facade, where all the bedrooms have that huge windows from the pavement to the... This is the typology, the complete plan. And with this beautiful solution that when you're working with social housing, it's a good strategy to use the minimum number of staircases possible because elevators are expensive, maintenance of elevators are expensive, and so on. So it's really efficient to use one staircase for apartments. But that means the worst typology in the world, because when you have just one staircase means that you're coming into the typology through the corner. That means for sure that you need a large corridor in order to go to all the bedrooms, okay? But thanks to the strategy, the first strategy of the central courtyard, the worst space of the house is the best, because giving to that corridor 180 meters wide can be worked as a studio, as a storage, as an extra seating, and then that corridor becomes a gallery, and all the bedrooms have that cross ventilation through the gallery and the continuous stair. Well, I'm coming to the end. Last experience. Too much? Well, just is the final as you see, we never, and it's not a tradition, it's not something that we have told between the partners and so on. We never explain projects. We hardly never explain projects. We always try to explain buildings that are already built and that can be checked, that can be reviewed, that we are proud to explain it because we've been there. And in general, we are also proud to say that the users invite us for dinner and so on, so we can have the vital experience to be there after the construction. And that's why we never explain projects. Maybe we have we have over the table of the office like 5 competitions that we've won, but are not already built, so we don't explain that in that kind of event. Okay? Maybe next time you invite me, I can explain a couple of projects more. This is a winery. This is a winery in El Priorat. El Priorat is a traditional zone of wine, but not really good wine. Okay, no, it wasn't a really good wine region. Okay, but in the 90s, a guy from La Rioja family come here looking for a new kind of soil. They were looking for new kind of soils, desiring a new kind of wine and so on. And that kind Álvaro Palacios discovered that the original way of plantation of the vineyards in that region be in that slopey system. During the 19th and 20th century, in order to be more efficient, they come into that slopey steps section, but he discovered the original way of plantation. He discovered that the soil was so good. So from the 90s to now, that El Priorat region has become a well-known area in Catalonia about good wines and so on. This client, this commission, comes from a Swiss guy, Swiss surgery doctor, but because that looks like that to be surgery in Switzerland, it's a good business because he's able to develop this new business. He bought an old vineyards, very good vineyards and so on, and he asked us, he gave us the commission for the new winery. The orchards already exist. They used to do a wine, but in a different place, and he wanted to have a new building for his new management of the company. Very small company. It's 100,000 bottles per year. The good, I'm explaining that to you because in El Priorat, which is a poor region, bad wines and so on, the winery buildings used to be very, very small and into the real houses of the people who manage the vineyard. So it didn't was big buildings in the middle of the landscape. It was the traditional wineries were on the basement of the houses on the villages. And the good commission and the guy, the Switzerland guy, decided to do the same, to develop the winery, not in the landscape, but in the middle of the town, just in front of the church. So he bought like 5 attached houses, and this is the plot that we received. And this good decision, it was was not our decision. This is a very basic strategy, not really sophisticated. We just did that decision because we have to be a part of the neighbors. So we decided to make a big difference between the producing part of the process with the part when you do the process of the wine, not the engines, but the vats. The vatting room and the cellar is in that Euclidean volume, and the rest, the gap, the difference between that Euclidean geometry and attached the partition walls with the neighbors is what can be called a social and logistic. You know that every day the wine business needs more that social dimension, selling, experience. So that experience dimension is based on that snake that surrounds the batting room. And this is a very easy section. I mean, just the batting room with the cellar on the right side, and that intermediate space, just roof, not closed, completely open, natural ventilation, and so on for the logistics moments of battling, when the grapes arrives in September and so on. So it's a very simple strategy in terms of program and urban decisions. Okay, you see that we are just close to the church. Well, here you've seen that we do a lot of bricks building. We always love to show the bricks as it is, and here we tried again. But here, per norms, the council asked for to plaster the facades has to be plastered with the same color with the traditional construction. And we present to the council beautiful renders with a quite yellow brick. Okay, and the council admits the image. They accept that for once we will be allowed to do a building just with pure bricks because the color was quite close. But what we love is the red brick. Now, the La cabra tira al monte is another thing. You always go to what you really like. So we've forgotten that we were in an agreement with the council. We did our building with the red, beautiful brick that we love. But at the end of the process, one day the mayor of the council comes into the building and he was completely really mad because of the color of the building. Really mad. It was close to a physical moment. And so again, after the bad comes the good, we come into that research of that traditional technique, which is called xabelga. Una xabelga is like a coating, but not, it's a mortar, but really with a lot of water, okay? Between a painting and a mortar, okay? Xabelga. And it's very traditional. It's with limestone. It's a limestone mortar with natural color, with that density of water that if there's a picture, well, if you come really close to the, you can feel the texture of the bricks. Okay, so again, when you get stress in your process, is when the better shows up and you are able to really develop new ideas and new. So that's not only about the material; it's also about how you place the material over the wall. You have to be checking with a lot of different tools, from the hand, just your hands, or with a big wood stick, like a painting, checking. Now we do it with a palette. So this is the social space. In fact, there's no other staircase. Everything is out of the producing space. Even the stairs are surrounding to that space. You see that the stairs to go to the office or to the testing room, it's on this surrounding space with the red brick. Here was possible to remain with the red brick. But what for me is interesting of this building, and that's why I like to finish with that again, is coming back to the beginning, to the thermodynamics in order to produce an extraordinary experience. An extraordinary experience for wine, but also when you come inside that building in the middle of July, 40 degrees outside, and you come here and you have the feeling of 21, 22, like something interesting is happening, okay? Just based on pure passive strategy. Here, the interesting of the building is that we have placed that enormous walls with a lot of material, with a lot of heavy bricks to introduce all that mass that helps us to make the temperature more continuous and soft. Okay? But when you work with that kind of thermodynamics that need that combination with ventilation, the more surface you have, the better you can take off the excess of energy. Okay? The walls during the day are keeping the energy. The night, you have to take it off thanks to the natural ventilation. So the more surface for the wind touching the walls, the easiest you can take off all that heat. That's why those walls are not just a desire of an architect. That our architecture is not conventional, but it's not just original to be different to the rest. It's always based in really clear strategies and decisions and research. So that's why it's a multi-layer wall, not to look better in a section, but to have a lot of surface, thanks to the natural ventilation, take off excess of energy. All is done with the same brick, and there's the multi-layers, okay? It's the same brick placed, also the structural wall, and this one worked like a huge bin from one wall to the other, producing that camera for ventilation. Okay. and producing this beautiful space for the bathing room. You can see here where the air goes up, and also can cross through the roof, because the beams of the roof has also like holes because of the bricks that lets the ventilation can cross also the top of the structure. Okay? And in a natural conditions, in that basic thermodynamics means that in wind, well, because the big challenge of this building was that we admit from the owner to have this building between 21 and 24 degrees the whole year for the producing of wine. Okay, so did that strategy, and it was all right, and it was more or less working well. But we were a little bit over the 25 summertime, 26. So here there's a final research, which is a little bit, well, it's quite interesting because it's working, and it's the final element that produces that very strong sensation when you come inside of cold summer. We place that small swimming pool on the top of the building, okay, that you know that at night, well, that we lose energy in front of bigger mass than we are, okay? So the infinite amount of mass is the sky, because it's an infinite amount of mass. So we lose far more energy to the sky than to our neighbor, let's say. That's why people use hats. That's why in Morocco, people sleep on the top of the roof at summer, okay? Because you are more fresh if you're losing energy in front of the sky. So we place that small amount of water in the top of the roof in order to give back energy to the sky during the night. So even at summertime, the water gets really cold. Right? During the day, we put the water 20 centimeters below, okay, on the camera, refreshing the structure, producing something that is completely amazing, that we have reversed the typical convective movement. So the air goes up, but when it touches the structure, well, this happens at the very hot moment of the day. You have to be close, because if you open your windows at the very hot moment of the day at midday in summertime, the air that comes inside comes hot. So you have to open a lot at night, but during the day, it's better to be close. So even during this very tough moment, thanks to that, we are reversing the movement of the air, and the air goes up and goes down because it gets so cold when it touches the structure. So, I mean, it doesn't look very sexy strategy, but the moment of when you come into that building in that summer moment coming from outside, it's quite astonishing. Okay? The bathing room. And this is the image of the swimming in a moment that the swimming is not working, because it's supposed that during the day the water should be below. But for the picture is far better. And with this picture, and thank you very much, everything that I wanted. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Josep. Thank you very much. If you have a little energy to respond or some answers, we have a beautiful box here, because we had the last technology in this school, and if you want to play, I throw you the box and you ask a question. It's great. Who wants to ask the first question? No one wants to play? I will ask the first. Josep, is there now some strategy about the choose, how you choose project? Yes, do you have this possibility to choose some project and some programs? Are there programs where you say, okay, we don't go because we don't feel it, or something like that.
But it's interesting. We did a small book, just written, and part of the idea of the book that we have a part of all those commissions and projects. We have a project which is the office. The office is a project. We are in our 50s. We met each other at the school, and we're working as friends, working together because we have a specific process. We try to be as objective as possible. We always try to avoid the personal desires in the design process. That means that sentences like "I want," "I imagine," it's never used at the office. We are not here to desire, at least if you want to work as a team of 4. I don't know if you work as teams at the school, but you know that it's not easy to work as a team. So imagine being a team of 4. Okay? We've been working together for 25 years. That means to avoid any kind of personal desires, of imagination, of just pure dreams. What I mean is that the process is really important because it's the only way to survive being 4. And part of the process is also to decide what kind of commission we accept or we try to get. So from the very beginning, we have tried, and that's why we are such a poor people in our city. I want to be completely clear about that. Not smiling. They are really poor of surviving. But this is because at the very beginning of the office, we decided that we didn't accept commissions where the promoter gonna win money with architecture. Because could be the best or higher cultural level, the whatever. But if he wants our building to be sold, the balance of his decisions, there's not only architecture. So that's why we decided like 18, 19 years ago that kind of commissions based on house or just private housing for selling, haven't done any one. Okay? Private houses is different. And in general, we just accept that kind of houses. People who wants really to live there, maybe in 10 years they're gonna sell the house. That's a different moment, okay? But this is very clear to us, and it's been paid like that. So there's a project called Harquitectes based in the process and the way that we define our commission. Based on that, we don't want people who earn money just by selling houses. So that means that you get really the only way to get commissions are friends, okay, and competitions. So the competition is the perfect commission because you're getting the commission based on architectonical decision, based in your design. A better client. Maybe he is going to be out of budget. You're going to have enough money. The other thing that when we look to the competition, I've said to you that we look for that gap between surfaces and so on. But we have a fourth partner, David. He's the manager of the office. And we have like an Excel frame. That Excel has like 20 years. He began to do the Excel 20 years ago, looking at all the competitions, kind of jury, if they have budget. If at the end of the process, doesn't matter if we have win or not, the building has been done. Because there's a lot of competition that just, we say in Catalan, per fer bullir l'olla. Before of the election, let's present that we're going to do that and that and that. Happens a lot. And as we present just built projects, we don't want to lose our time with good ideas, winning competitions that never going to happen. That's why we are so nervous now, because in Catalonia, there's a lot of political problems and so on, even Spain. That means that the budgets of the administration goes down. Then competitions that you won that are so clear that going to be built suddenly disappear. Basically like that.
Quelqu'un?
Thanks a lot for your presentation. It was very clear. when we are doing project here at school, the climate issues and everything come a bit after our first intention. And I was wondering how in your office you are doing the inverse way, like the climate and engineering, very complex things are going at the very beginning of the architectural process of the project. Do you have like engineers at your agency, or
Oh, it's interesting. No, we don't have engineers. And I mean, and you're not studying like I used to do when I was your age. We were completely aware, completely in our design process. Not only climate, but material was not part of the process. Completely. Nothing like that. It was just about to have the smartest section possible, the smartest strategy in terms of program, in terms of place. Yeah, in Barcelona at least, a lot about the place, city. So, but in terms of material and climate behavior, nothing shows up during, and I studied for 7 years. My career was 6 years and final project. So I never listened, nothing about climate and so on. So you're lucky, because for sure that you're talking about that far more than what we did as a student. And of course that in general, when you are at school, you have to give a certain process to introduce that different strategies. But we've been working on that for 25 years. So now we work a lot with what we call archetypes. Archetypes mean very basic, synthetic, primordial geometry that for us, for the four of the office, 20 people that help us, we are in a mode that behind an archetype, behind a specific geometry, there's a material and there's a behavior. It's a little bit everything together, but not by doing sophisticated, the very first strategy geometries, but very basic geometries helps you a lot to introduce at the very first moment, not only the program, but the behavior of the building. So that's why we call archetypes, because are very, that kind of very synthetic geometry. But that you need, we are a little bit bizarre even in Barcelona. There's a lot of offices that look like with naked bricks and so on, but they are more in a mood of aesthetics, the material. We are more in the behavior of the material. So we are talking about behavior, and we are talking about the behavior of people, and at the end, to understand, and now, 25 years, I began to understand that, at least for me, I don't want to, I'm emphatic, maybe I look like too dogmatic. I don't want to convince anyone. It's the way that we work, it's the things that we believe. A lot of different strategies, a lot of different and extraordinary ways to do architecture. But it's the way that we ask for, productive, works, and so on. So for us, it's so clear that the matter has to be at the very beginning of the decision. For everybody is like that is quite part of the genetic. And I think it's because there's something interesting about our office, that when we were students, we decided that once a year we will try to visit some architecture around the world. So we rent a van, by this Holy Week, more or less. Every week we used to rent to France, to Switzerland, Sweden, Netherlands, to visit architecture. When we were your age, our visits were basically based on names. Went to Switzerland to visit Tumtor, Meuron, Olgiati, so on. We went to France to visit Nouvel, Delat, and so on. Now, it was like 18 years ago that we began to visit vernacular construction, to visit churches, to visit cathedrals, to visit quarries, landscapes, thanks to people, to architects from that places that were smarter than we were. They take us, come to visit them. We did an incredible visit to a quarry in Mallorca that was like a momentum. So I think that as we did that together, our relation with materia And with the idea of experience is quite the mood of the office. So now I'm able to say, and this is what I say to my students, that what we have to project, not the object, but the experience of people. Then we have to be able, we have to project, we have to imagine, not the experience of people, your own experience under certain conditions. So if you agree with that, and you don't have to agree, yes, but if you agree with that, your best library is not on the books, is in what has happened to your body. You're projecting experience. If you're projecting your own experience somewhere under certain conditions, then you're reproducing, you have to use your references as body that feels, as body that have temperatures, that smell, where in different places, in previous places, not just imagining. But I'm coming a little bit dark and difficult to.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you a little bit connected with this question. How do you work with the reference, with other people work? Because you talk about, for a moment, for like Tone Vassal or Lina Poparty, I think. So how do you work with that? Because I think in university we learn a bit how to work with other people work, because we have to start from something. And yes, how do you work with that, with your team and with your...
Yeah, well, as I said, we used to have references, that kind of classical and fantastic references. Our students need references, and we use references and books and fantastic architects and so on. We're just trying to introduce different kind of references, like what has happened to your body in a specific way. In our office, I had to say that we buy a lot of books, we hardly use it. Because our process at the office is like, we have like a huge table. We are like 20, 22. We are a huge table. The partners doesn't have a seat. We don't have seat. So I have a laptop, always with my laptop. And we have more chairs than working places, of course. Then we're all the time around the table talking. Project like I remember when I was young, a sentence from Jean Nouvel saying that he projects talking and talking. Chatting and chatting. And sometimes sleeping. And we project by talking. So it's a dialectical process. Not about, and there's, for example, Miller Maranta has an interesting, really interesting process in order that using not references, but images. They work in that kind of Jungian process, intellectual process, trying to get just the impression that gives you an image. So there's a lot of ways of working. Our way of working, because we are from the very beginning, is by a dialectical process. And the references are interesting. Sometimes shows up, and sometimes, but our main source of reference, what I've said before, is our previous visit, and the visit that we are lucky to say that we are able to revisit our own building, and to check what has gone all right, what hasn't gone so all right. This is the base.
So you said that your work is kind of untypical sometimes, and also that my question is, you often meet problems with because you also talked about the concept that wasn't happy. You often meet problems with norms and rules, because, for example, the easiest way maybe would be to put like a big line of isolation or something, and then you say, yeah, but I just open all the windows during summer. And do you meet a lot of problems with this?
our big luck that we are in Spain and we are friends of Germany. So, and I'm not saying that like, oh, we are in the bottom of Europe. No. I'm saying that because Spain still have, we're losing that, but we still have a minimum level of craft work. We have craft workers, we still have masonries that are able to do. These houses has been done by companies, conventional companies that want to earn money. So we are in that moment in terms of working process, that we still have craft work enough in order to design and develop very conscious and have different outreach process, and it works. In terms of norms, we are a little bit lack. Why? Not because of the norms. In Spain, the norms are as awful, as terrible, as restricted as in Switzerland, in France, in everywhere. The difference in Spain is that the powerful of the insurances companies are far lower than in France, in Germany, in Switzerland. What does it mean? Forget about the norms in terms of, for example, fire conditions, because in our office, as the insurance are not so powerful, we are able, and we have, one of my best workers at the office of a judge, has a lot of lawyers at his family, that incredible guy. But he was able, by going really deep into the norms, fire norms, he was able to convince the fire department of Barcelona City to do a completely different, strange interpretation of the norms. So you can talk with the fire department, and by going really to change the strategy, to looking the law on the other side, if you are logical and you are able, none of these houses has less of 4,000 office hours. And for the people who has an office here, try to imagine what means 4,000 hours of work on that house. Losing money, but you have hours enough to come into the laws and to change the agreement. But then in Spain, the insurance companies are not powerful enough to come and say that doesn't matter what the fire department is saying, because they want to be completely sure. So they want conventional solutions. And when you go to Germany, what happens is that the law, sometimes in general in Switzerland, the law is quite far more smart and more flexible than Spain. But then the insurance come and tell you that the fire elements need that distance because whatever, so on and so on. So that's the two lacks of Spain. Then it's completely different to do a house than to do an equipment. Facility has to be checked after the building is finished to see if all the strategy, the facilities in Spain, but in the rest of Europe is worse, as quite impossible to survive the idea of artificial per law. Why? Because at least in Spain like this, the laws about climatization are done by engineers, not by architects. So all the passive are all right, but you need always a backup in terms of artificial system. All the inertia strategy is all right, it's fantastic, but I want that you climatizate with air conditioning and not with heating pavement. Why? Because the norms in terms of climatization, specifically for facilities, for equipments like this, ask for that level of artificial system. And they use the concept that this is for sustainability. Why? Because the sustainability strategies are far easier to be checked by numbers than by feelings. And efficiency is better to be checked than demands. So what is fantastic for the people who do the norms, that are engineers, is to put a lot of machines, because the machines has a perfect book with all the efficiency numbers, so sustainable, really efficient in terms of resources and so on. But when you go there with a passive strategy, like it's true that, for example, the sun chimneys that I've shown you, now it's impossible to be done. And things are changing. But for a house, not asking the people to live like in the caves. We're asking to be comfortable, but giving confidence to us that we're getting that comfort by using windows, closing. They have heating systems, but in the pavements, something that, for example, a heating system in the pavement, even if it's cool, is the only system that is possible to be compatible with open the window, because the radiation is already there. But if you come into this house with your car, if you go into your car and you look the air conditioning system, you have to close the window. Air, if not, moves and goes out. But if you have a heating system, the pavement in the surface of the structure of the enclosure, the energy is already there. The air will move, but the radiation is already there. But I'm repeating it. And coming to the about the engineers. Have engineers, and of course that we need engineers to develop sun chimneys that move 15,000 volume meters per hour, so on, so on, so on. You need engineers. Not at the office, but engineers that works with us really close and so on, with the structures and with the climate system. But you need a very special kind of engineer that assume that comfort can be, that you can get comfort without machines. You need the engineer for the simulations, because there's a lot smaller machines. You have to do the calculation of the heating of the pavement and so on. But he has to assume that the comfort is based on architectonical strategies. And not all the engineers want to assume that challenge.
La jeter ou pas? Merci. Because you talked about archetypes, I was wondering if, and as you're confronted to very common constraints such as heating and air conditioning and recycling material and stuff, I was wondering if at your office you're cataloging those things as a bank of data of all those archetypes that you would be willing to make accessible as solutions.
Well, I mean, the archetypes that, I mean, archetype is something that already exists. I mean, archetype is a cathedral and so on. Develop, let's say, and it sounds too much, we are not developing new archetypes. We're developing typologies, and the beginning of the process helps us a lot, that what I've been explaining before. I have to say you that I don't know, and I always explain that, and people doesn't believe me, but I don't know better architects, I'm trying to be true, than my partners. An incredible, skilled, talent, handsome partners. And they are really skilled. Also drawing. We are great drawers. I think that we are so skilled about that, that all the papers of the office are like rubbish, are the rubbish at the end of the day. I mean, we don't have that kind of, you know, that kind of drawings that you remain in your notebook and so on. No, no, no. And Roger, for example, my partner, is an incredible drawer of that kind of very tough schemes, very clear, or inside views or whatever, but it's like a drawing. And then in the office, in that huge table, we have a lot of paper that has been waste, like used in one side, like a lot of that paper. We are all the time doing the drawings on that kind of paper, because after you use the paper goes to the rubbish. So, I mean, we don't have that kind of idea of memory. But I think that the projects are so simple in the geometry and the section that it's quite clear to understand the genetics, the biography of the process. I think it's quite not you can send us a mail asking what's the archetype behind this project.
Josep, just a minute. I would like to thank you so much to come to us. Thank you for them, for the students. Thank you for the hope you gave us. And thank you for architecture. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.